Welcome back to another installment of Local Perspectives. I spend a lot of time thinking about who to invite on my show. My guests and I always have a certain level of history dating back at least a few years. Today's guest is no exception. I've known her for 15 years. Katie Provenza is a graphic designer with a story I hope you Gen Z listeners will latch onto in particular. As you'll see, Katie didn't know what exactly she was going to do with her life upon graduating high school, and that's okay. Her professional path took a few twists and turns before she wound up right where she belongs. I'm glad she still calls St. Augustine home all these years later. We had fun reconnecting in this setting to talk gratitude, looking at the bright side, and testing the waters when it comes to choosing a profession. If you aren't smiling already, just wait. You'll find Katie's zest for life to be contagious. Katie Provenza, thank you so much for being here today.
So happy to be here with you.
Yeah, in our physical distancing edition of Local Perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah, we're rolling with the punches.
Yeah.
I know it. Yeah, it's a moment in history.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm happy to join the club along with like John Krasinski and Jimmy Fallon and the like. Everybody seems to be doing it, so why not?
You're in good company.
Right? So how are you doing? How are you coping with this remarkable moment we find ourselves living in?
You know, I feel like I am very thankful and very fortunate in that my situation might be a bit unusual. My office and my work is very close to my house. It's right down the street, actually, so I often walk there. And there are just a few of us on staff, so we're sort of each other's quarantine crew. So there hasn't been a lot of disruption there. But I also feel like, and I think I've heard a lot of people saying this too, uh, it comes and goes in waves, you know, things are weird, and so there definitely have been some struggles, but all in all, doing okay.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. It's good to count blessings right now. I feel like that's what my family and I have been doing, spending a lot of time outside at the beach and doing nature trails and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I've been going on lots of walks and runs and going over the Volano Bridge, which has been lovely. The water has been so green, I think, because there's less pollution, and it's definitely been keeping me sane too. So.
Yeah. Yeah, this definitely is a good backdrop given the circumstances, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
So, as usual, to start, I'd love to play a quick game, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And it's aptly named Crisis Situation.
Cool.
But it's a fun exercise. We will each think of an object and a problem without sharing them with each other. And then after we both pick, I'll tell you what we'll do next, okay?
Okay, so an object and a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
You're faster than me. Okay. Okay, I got him too. So what's your object and your problem?
A jar that I can't open. Is that like a
Nice.
Is that okay? Is that too much of a girl problem?
I'm impressed with how you were able to kind of like merge the two into one. That's cool. Okay, that's fine. That's perfect. My object is salt, and my problem is a chipped tooth. So.
Oh, so they're supposed to be unrelated.
Not necessarily. I mean, in your case, I would say the jar could be the object, and then like being unable to open something could be the problem.
Okay.
Cool. So the fun part is now, how are you going to use your jar to fix my chipped tooth?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, it can just be spontaneous. And
Can I just tell you?
yeah,
Okay, we're going to chisel a piece of the glass in the shape of what your missing chip is in your tooth, and we're just going to epoxy that right on there like you
sweet.
did to your mailbox today.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. Yeah, before we started recording, I had shared with you that I was doing a
Oh,
little
I
mailbox
forgot that
project.
was
That is so
before.
funny. Oh, great. I love it. Okay, so how am I going to help you open the jar with my salt? Hmm.
Ooh. Oh, this
Yes,
could get scientific.
I know. Salt is pretty coarse, so I would coat my palm with it, and that would help me get a good grip.
Mm,
And I think I would be able to open it no problem. Yeah.
nice.
And that's how that works. Crisis
Look at
situation,
us
crisis
solving
averted.
problems.
Yeah. Glass teeth and salty jars. Katie, I was really enjoying reading almost like exactly a year ago today, actually, which is pretty funny.
Wow, doesn't
Um,
seem like it's been that long.
yeah, you did a guest post on my blog, and I was so happy that you participated and just really thrilled with your insights and experiences that you shared. And I revisited it, and I was really intrigued by how a lot of the talking points are especially relevant right now in the midst of some of the consequences of the pandemic. And I thought it would be fun to talk about a little bit of that. But first,
Yeah,
I would love to just ask a few questions about your background. And
sure.
I think one of the most telling questions or interesting questions that we can ask each other is, what were you like as a kid?
Hmm. Um, so my grandmother, she is 97, about to turn 97, and she is uh, one of those people who speaks her mind and uh, is very sort of behind what she believes in, and she's always working, and she's kind of a busybody, and her house is always immaculate, and she's always involved with whatever is happening in the family. She's kind of like the glue. And so when I was little, she's also a sort of loud Italian lady. And uh, when I was little, my family always would call me Little Nana. And uh, I guess I I was a lot like her. And the wonderful thing about her is that she is very about caring for people, and she'll do anything for anyone, which is really, really lovely. But I I actually, in the last several years, had the opportunity to live with her for a bit of time, and it was uncanny how many things about us were very alike. So, I don't know if that's a good enough answer, but I was sort of, uh, yeah, I was a very busy little child, taking care of things, taking
Yeah.
care of people, and making my opinions known. So,
Sounds like you were a little bit of an old soul.
yes, that is
Yeah.
definitely true.
It's great that you and your grandma have that kind of bond and connection. And not many people can say they like roomed with their grandma, or maybe, I don't know, I guess a significant number of people do end up living with a grandparent at some point.
Yeah,
That is,
I'm so thankful to have had that opportunity because she's just a wonderful, wonderful person. And I used to call it the 93-year-old club, and then the 94-year-old club. And every year on her birthday, it would switch over. And yeah, so
wow. She has good genes, so that's something to look forward to, I'd say, for you.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Nona.
Yeah,
That
for
is,
sure.
that's awesome. I loved, so I had also asked you last year about your morning rituals,
Hmm.
and I still just love how you expressed the way that you wake up slowly and daylight pours into your room in a beautiful way, and you just kind of um, sit there and revel in a little bit of thankfulness. So I get the impression that you're the kind of person that tries to practice gratitude. Um,
Yeah.
what would you say, maybe on like a difficult day, what are things that you are grateful for that keep you grounded or give you perspective that there's always some kind of silver lining or something good going on?
You know, I I feel like I just try to look around during the day and just see things and be thankful for the things that are there. So, for example, during this time, like I said before, I've been taking a lot of walks over the Volano Bridge, and one day I was walking and I heard a dolphin in the water, you know, the like blowing out of the water through the blowhole or whatever they do.
Hmm.
I heard it before I saw it, and I knew to look, and I looked and I saw all these dolphins like jumping through the water. And I'm an auditory learner and an auditory person, so I think that's why I noticed those things first. But I just was like, wow, what, this is such a special moment, like during COVID-19 and trying times. And I'm just here seeing these dolphins and hearing these dolphins in this beautiful green water that is not affected by as much pollution right now. And, or another example, I don't know why this sticks out in my head, but uh, one time when I was a teacher, and there were a lot of trying days when
Hmm.
I was teaching.
We're going to
Uh,
get back to that. Just briefly.
I I had already had sort of a rough morning, like the copy machine was broken and something about my day's schedule had been disrupted. And so I just already was frustrated about this day, and it hadn't even started. And all my students started coming in, and one of my students, and this was probably totally out of uniform, but I was okay with it. She had these bows on her knee socks, like right at the top of her knee socks. And I saw them and I was like, who puts bows on knee socks? That's so cute. And I was so, like, in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it through the day because there are bows on knee socks. So, you know, I think it's just for me, in good moments and in hard moments, looking around and really trying to see what is around me that I can be thankful for. So,
I love that story. Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Um, I don't know if that student anticipated how she would have kind of like changed the course of your day like that. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The ocean has been a huge lifeline for me. I feel like whether it's the minerals or the negative ions or the salt or the breeze, I don't know, there's something very healing and cleansing about it. And I'm sure there's like something physiological about that environment. I was taking a walk on the beach during like the limited hours that we had. Um,
Mm.
and the water was fairly calm, not unlike lately. It's been pretty crazy, but a few
Yeah.
weeks ago it was really calm. And I love to just float on my back and close my
Mm.
eyes. And I did that. I went up to Kookaburra for a coffee afterward. And while I was walking back to the car to meet up with my family, it occurred to me that the entire time that I was walking on the sand and in the water, I didn't have one disquieting thought. I wasn't stressed or anxious or worried about anything. And
Wow.
I didn't realize it until I started to have those thoughts again.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like I just lived for those moments. It was really kind of just a good realization that I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm also shout out to St. Johns County. I'm so impressed because um, the surfing community in particular was begging for some kind of new approach to make sure that they could get out there and have
Mm-hmm.
that like spiritual experience. Um, and when they finally got their wish, I went over there, and the first time I went, there was like 100 feet between people. You know, it was really quiet. We live in a small community, so that
Yeah.
helps. But I was like, okay, St. Johns County, you guys really, you're doing your part. You're playing by the rules. I respect that so
Yeah.
much. It just made me very happy
Yeah.
at
That's
like
good.
human behavior.
For sure.
So that was awesome. So we talked morning rituals. We also talked about the St. Augustine design scene in recent years. And I just posted something on my Instagram from Flagler's recent, I think it was in December. They had their graphic design showcase for the graduating class. And I was really impressed with a lot of the work I saw, their portfolios and upcoming projects. What is your take on how the design needs and scene have kind of flourished lately? It seems in Northeast Florida in general, but especially St. Augustine seems to be cranking out a lot of designers. What would you say led to your foray into that industry?
Well, I had gone, what led me to it, I guess, is I had gone back to school not knowing where that would take me, but to study graphic design. And so then I just connected with future friends shortly after school, and they are awesome, Luke and Danielle, who own Future Friends. And just, sort of that was my introduction into the design here. And I think a really great thing that I have seen is there's sort of this generation coming up that's, around our age that are really invested in this community and in this locale. And when you are somewhere, you want it to be an awesome place to be. And so many people with so much integrity behind their concepts of what they're doing are really sort of digging deep into this community, which is presenting a lot of opportunities for design, which has been really fun to be a part of. And
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm just now starting to have a better understanding of even the sensibilities of designers. I remember when my friend Sandro interviewed you and Danielle for his podcast some time ago. And he's interviewed quite a few designers over the years now. And it's really remarkable to hear the trajectory and just like the mindset of these ones. And I remember being 17 and having a schoolmate who was older than me that was doing some graphic design projects. And he was, from what I understood at the time, he was able to charge like an impressive amount for certain projects and things like that. And I was like, how much do you charge for? I was like, wow, and I considered myself an artistic person, but at the time I would have been leaning more toward being like a novelist or an English teacher or something like that. And for like a quick moment, I had that thought, and I was very, very quickly talked out of it, unfortunately. And it wasn't something that I was so passionate about at the time that I kind of defied that. But I ended up sticking with English. But now I feel like anyone who pursued design is being vindicated, because you hear stories of people throwing up a design of their favorite band and tagging them in the picture, and it leads to them doing all their merch and like email campaigns and just all their branding. And you can, despite physical distancing, you can still work from anywhere if you have an internet connection.
Totally. I think too that it's a little bit of a sad thing to me, and I think I experienced this to a certain level too, where it's true, it was something that was maybe, I don't want to say discouraged, but for me, I remember, similarly to you, being really young, probably in like 5th or 6th grade, and thinking, ooh, design. Like, I think I am interested in that. But just always sort of pushing that to the side, or other things being promoted as maybe better or more lucrative or whatever. And I also think that I had a lot of people in my life who were, in my mind, like more artistic or more designy than me. And so I just always was like, oh, that's not me. That's totally not for me. And, then like for a brief moment when I was in school, I was like, oh, Spanish is a short major. I should probably double major and like figure something else out, maybe design. But it was like the thought was out of my head before, as fast as it even came into my head. So, I think it's a little sad to me that maybe that happened to some people or is still happening to some people, but I am glad that design is so much more of a prominent thing now, and there's so many more opportunities for designers. So.
Yeah, well said. You said a buzzword that triggered a thought earlier, talking about the upcoming generation. And I think that's at the heart of the struggle. So our parents, people our parents' age, and this is something that I'm so passionate about and I talk about all the time. The world that they grew up in does not exist anymore. The world changes so quickly. I mean, the world that you and I grew up in, I don't think exists anymore. It's not relatable to Gen Z, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the world is not worthy of these kids. I mean, they've seen very little peace in their lifetime. It seems like
Yeah.
it's really hard to navigate, and I feel like we really have to cut them some slack sometimes if they if they come across as blasé or whatever, or not
Mm-hmm.
caring. It's kind of understandable. So I think when our parents or loved ones who are older come across, we're met with this concern about the practicality of certain pursuits. It's because they only know what they know. They can't help it. And I'm sure I'm
Right.
guilty of the same thing when I give
Oh,
advice
yeah.
to younger people. But it's a really difficult thing. But I love those moments when I think of someone like Jenna Alexander, all these artists, or anyone really that I've heard interviewed in a lot of capacities, like Fresh Air, for example. So many times
Mm-hmm.
you have people pursue art and their families or their friends might say, "Oh, we really care about you, so we're just going to tell you what we really think, and maybe think twice, or maybe go for this or go for that instead. What worked for them." And then all of a sudden, there's like a big event happening, and they're at the heart of it, and they're releasing a series, or they just won an award. They're supporting themselves. It's become a real career for them, and it's like, oh wow, you really can support yourself, and I'm so proud of you. And you just kind of have to have that like patient leap of faith, I think,
Yeah.
and just see how it turns out. Because nowadays, I mean, with social media and YouTube, and if you have a skill that you've already put the hours into, and then you present yourself as that thing, whether it's music or art, storytelling, and it catches on for whatever reason, I mean, you can really, it's much easier to do those kind of things now than it was,
Yeah.
even, 20 years ago.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So dialing back just a little bit, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about the transition from teaching Spanish to working in graphic design. That was a really practical move, right? Like you can tack it on because it's like you said, it's not a big necessarily course of study, and you're so efficient in your approach. You even considered the fact that I can get a certification and still teach without necessarily doing the degree, which is really smart because time is valuable. Um, what would you say that transition looked like for you from teaching to design?
So I was really just at a point with teaching where I loved it and I loved my students. I loved a lot of things about it, but I was at a place where I knew it was time for a change. And I didn't know if that meant just teaching at another school or moving out of the country, because that's always been appealing to me. Um, but so there were some options, out on the table. I just knew I couldn't stay where I was. And this probably that same voice like in sixth grade and in the beginning of college that was like, maybe you want to do design. It like sort of popped back up into my head, and I was kind of skeptical, and I was just like, oh my gosh, all of these things would have to fall into place if that were to be a practical option. And so it was really weird because I wasn't really pursuing it. And then all of the things that would have to fall into place just started happening. So it was a really interesting time where I just was sort of like, okay, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. I wouldn't have guessed that or thought that it was even going to be possible, but okay, I will follow the signs. So I did that. And then I remember going to my first day of class, my first drawing class, and walking up to the door and just being like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, there is nothing to I have never had any formal training in art or design whatsoever. There is absolutely nothing telling me that this is going to work. And somehow it worked. It worked out. So, you know, I think from the beginning to the end of my time in school, I didn't really know what was ahead of me or where any of it was leading, but in the end, it all worked out.
That does it for part 1. Stay tuned, the best is yet to come. So keep your eyes peeled for part 2. Till next time.